At the execution stand, her wolf awoke. The alpha fell first when the golden luna rose. Even the marketplace, where voices usually clashed like hammers on stone, had fallen still. Word had spread quickly. A woman accused of treachery was to face the execution stand. Her name was Lyra, though few in the city had ever dared speak it aloud. She walked between two guards, her hands bound tightly behind her back. Her head was lifted by some stubborn courage, though her body shivered against the chill. The sun had yet to rise, and a pale, silvery light washed the city in an eerie calm. The cobblestones glistened with frost, and every corner seemed sharper, more dangerous than usual. Crowds gathered along the wide streets, whispering in hushed tones. They had been warned. Lyra was dangerous. They did not know why exactly, but they had all heard rumors that her eyes, dark and strange, could unsettle even the bravest of men. She did not cry out. She did not struggle. Her wolf, the creature hidden deep within her, stirred quietly, feeling the tension of the world like a heartbeat beneath her ribs. Lyra had never allowed it to awaken before, not fully. And yet, as she approached the execution square, something within her shifted. The Alpha King, Lord of Wolves and Men, sat atop his raised throne, watching. His presence filled the square like a shadow stretching across the ground. He was young, strong, with a crown that seemed to weigh more than his head could bear, for it carried the legacy of his ancestors and the curse of the moon that had haunted his bloodline for centuries. When his eyes met hers, the air between them tightened. Lyra's wolf stirred, sensing the depth of his power. It was strange to her, this pull she felt toward a man who had the reputation of a tyrant. Her wolf did not obey the logic of fear, it obeyed instinct. And instinct told her he was important. More than that, instinct told her that the world was about to change. The executioner waited at the center of the square. His axe gleamed coldly in the dim light, and his eyes showed no hesitation. Behind him, the crowd pressed closer, hungry for spectacle. The silence was sharp, as if the city itself were holding its breath. The moment the guards pushed Lyra to her knees at the stand, a strange warmth spread across her chest. She lifted her eyes, catching sight of the sky where the first rays of the rare golden moonlight began to pierce the clouds. It was not supposed to rise for another hour, yet here it was, spilling light like liquid gold over the frost-covered square. The whispers started immediately, low and fearful. "See it! The moon, it shouldn't be here. She is cursed, mark my words. The blood of wolves runs through her veins." Lyra felt her heartbeat quicken, and with it, the stirring of her wolf. It pulsed beneath her skin, not with rage but with a strange, controlled power. Her senses sharpened. She could hear the shiver of the wind through the city walls, the slight rustle of a bird in the distance, the murmured fear of the crowd. But most of all, she could feel him, the Alpha, the man who held her fate in his gaze. He did not look away. He had seen many executions in his life, and yet something about this one made him falter. The frost of the morning seemed to bite less, the silence pressed in more. There was recognition in her eyes, ancient, unspoken, and terrifying in its clarity. The executioner raised his axe. The crowd leaned forward, eager for the final sound of metal striking flesh. The guards holding Lyra tightened their grip, though she did not resist. She did not need to. Then the golden moonlight struck her fully. A warmth, like sunlight filtered through honey, spread across her body. Lyra felt her wolf stir violently now, a surge of strength and life she had never known. Her mind cleared. Her fear dissolved into a calm so deep it felt like a river flowing beneath stone. And in that moment, something broke. The execution stand shuddered. The axe, raised high, wavered in the executioner's hands. A low hum filled the air, rising like the beating of 1,000 wings. The crowd gasped, stepping back instinctively. Even the guards faltered. And then, impossibly, the stand itself cracked, splintering under some unseen force. Lyra's eyes glowed faintly, golden in the moonlight. Her wolf awakened fully, not as a beast of blood but as a spirit of power and justice, raw and undeniable. She rose to her knees, trembling not with fear but with the first true awareness of her own strength. The Alpha King stumbled from his throne. His hand went to his chest, as if the pulse of her awakening had struck him directly. He had faced armies, witches, spirits, and the darkest curses of his bloodline, yet he had never encountered anything like this. He fell to one knee, shocked and unprepared for the force of her presence. The crowd panicked. Shouts rang out and some tried to flee, but the square seemed to stretch endlessly under the golden light. The frost melted from the cobblestones where her power touched, and whispers of awe and terror blended into the frozen air. Lyra did not move toward the Alpha. She did not even speak. She simply rose, feeling the wolf's strength coursing through her. She knew instinctively that the balance of power had shifted. The world she had been forced into, the chains of fear and accusation, had been broken in an instant. The executioner's axe fell, but it hit only the shattered wood of the stand, scattering splinters like snow. He stumbled back, eyes wide, realizing that the woman he had come to kill now radiated a power he could neither understand nor resist. The Alpha King struggled to his feet, eyes never leaving hers. His mind raced, filled with questions he dared not speak. Who was she? How had she survived the execution? And what was this golden light that seemed to awaken a wolf spirit within her? Lyra's lips parted slightly, not in words but in understanding. Her wolf had awakened, yes, but not for destruction. It had awakened to protect, to judge, to restore. And the Alpha was the first to fall, not to her, but to the sheer truth of what she had become. The crowd fell silent, watching the impossible. The golden moon rose higher, illuminating Lyra's form like a statue of light and shadow. The Alpha's breath came in ragged gasps. He was unbroken physically, but something inside him had shifted irrevocably. Then, with a sound like the wind through iron gates, the wolf inside Lyra spoke, not in words but in presence. It filled the square with a low, vibrating energy, as if the earth itself recognized the birth of something ancient and inevitable. And in that moment, one thought passed through the Alpha's mind, clear and undeniable. She is not like any woman I have ever known. She is a force of the world itself, and I will never be able to ignore her. Lyra, feeling the wolf's calm, let herself breathe. The danger had not passed. She was still surrounded by the guards, by the city, by a kingdom that would see her as a threat. But for the first time she did not feel fear. She felt power. And she felt the truth, that her life and the life of the Alpha would never be the same again. As the golden light bathed the square, she lifted her eyes to the Alpha. Their gazes locked, not in hatred, not in surrender, but in recognition. A silent challenge passed between them, a promise of struggle, of power, of something neither had expected, and something neither could escape. The crowd dared not move. The frost melted beneath the light. And the first golden petals of the rare Luna flower, hidden in the royal gardens, seemed to bloom in response to the awakening wolf spirit. Lyra's wolf howled quietly within her, a sound felt more than heard. The Alpha King's chest tightened, as if the sound had reached into his very soul. And somewhere deep inside, both of them knew, the world they had lived in, the rules, the fear, the chains, had ended. The executioner dropped his axe. The guards hesitated. The crowd whispered prayers they had never spoken aloud. And Lyra, shackled no longer in spirit if not yet in body, took the first step toward a destiny that would demand everything from both her and the Alpha. The golden moon climbed higher, and with it, the promise of chaos, power, and an awakening that would not be denied. And the story had only just begun. The city was restless after the events at the execution square. Rumors spread like wildfire. A woman, accused of treachery, had survived her death sentence, and not only survived, but awakened a force that none could explain. Soldiers patrolled the streets more tightly, and whispers of magic and destiny echoed in every corner. Lyra was no longer free to walk among the people. The Alpha King, still shaken by the morning's events, had commanded that she be brought to the castle. Heavy guards led her through the winding streets, the wolf inside her stirring at every step, sensing the fear and awe of those around her. Her eyes remained calm, but the wolf's awareness made her senses sharper than any human's. She could hear the tension in the soldiers' breaths, the quickened heartbeat of the crowd, and even the subtle hum of magic in the stone walls of the city. Inside the castle, the halls were cold and vast, their ceilings high and shadowed, lined with banners that spoke of centuries of rulership. The Alpha King, still trembling from the morning's shock, did not greet her immediately. He watched from the top of a staircase, his gaze sharp yet hesitant. He had faced countless battles, negotiated with dangerous allies, and ruled over a kingdom where fear was power, but this woman, this Lyra, was different. She did not bow. She did not plead. She only met his gaze, steady and unafraid. Her wolf stirred, restless yet patient, and she felt a strange sense of clarity, as though the world had narrowed to the single line between her and the Alpha. "Do you know what you have done?" the Alpha asked, his voice low and controlled, yet tinged with something unfamiliar, shock perhaps, or curiosity. "You survived what should have ended you." "How?" Lyra remained silent, letting the wolf within her answer instead. It hummed with power, a quiet vibration that even he could sense, though he could not understand it. The wolf was not just a beast, it was judgment, instinct, and strength, and it had awakened fully. "You do not understand," Lyra said finally, her voice calm but firm. "I did not come here to harm anyone. I do not seek battle, yet you fear me because you cannot see what I truly am." The Alpha took a slow step down the stairs, his crown catching the faint light from the high windows. He studied her, his pride and authority clashing with the undeniable force she radiated. The court had never seen him hesitate, but now he did, and it unnerved them more than any blade or war could. "Your wolf is unusual," he said carefully, testing words he was not used to speaking. "I have ruled this kingdom for 10 years. I have seen many beasts, many curses, many powers, but yours it is unlike any I have encountered, and it is dangerous." Lyra's eyes flickered with something both human and wild. "It is not dangerous to me. It is dangerous to injustice, to cruelty, to fear. It does not obey commands given out of pride or hatred, only truth." The Alpha's jaw tightened. There was something in her words, a clarity he could not ignore, even if he wanted to. The wolf inside her pulsed again, a steady rhythm that seemed to echo the heart of the castle itself. It was not threatening, yet it demanded attention. The court advisors, standing in the shadows, whispered among themselves. "She will destroy him," one said quietly, "or he will destroy her." Lyra heard none of it. She only felt the wolf guiding her, urging patience. She did not need to fight yet. She only needed to survive, to understand the power within her, and perhaps to understand the Alpha himself. Over the following days, she was confined to a small chamber within the castle, guarded but allowed certain freedoms. The Alpha, though wary, did not order her harmed. He observed her constantly, fascinated despite himself. And slowly, the tension between them grew, not a simple attraction, but a pull of opposites, of strength and challenge, of power and restraint. Lyra explored the castle in secret, guided by her wolf. She discovered long-forgotten corridors, ancient libraries filled with dust-covered tomes, and gardens untouched by time. And it was in one of these gardens, under the pale light of the golden moon that still lingered in the sky, that she found the first bloom of the golden Luna rose. Its petals shone softly, golden and alive, and she felt a surge of power as she drew near. The wolf within her stirred in anticipation, recognizing a kinship with the flower, both ancient, both rare, both capable of awakening destinies long buried. But before she could reach out, a voice spoke from the shadows, deep and commanding. "Do not touch it." The Alpha stepped into the moonlight, his expression unreadable. That flower is not yours to claim. Its power is tied to my bloodline. Touch it, and you may awaken forces you cannot control." Lyra lifted her gaze to meet his. "And if I do not touch it, will you let me remain a prisoner, a subject to your fear?" He said nothing at first, only studied her with a mixture of curiosity, caution, and something deeper he could not name. "You are reckless," he said finally, "and yet I see truth in you. Perhaps more truth than in any court advisor, any soldier, or even myself." Her wolf stirred again, urging her not to test him further, yet the pull of the golden Luna rose was undeniable. She could feel it reaching out to her, as if calling her to awaken something more than her wolf, something that could reshape not just her life, but the kingdom itself. The Alpha's presence was overwhelming. He was not just a man of flesh and bone. He carried centuries of power, of burden, of duty, and of curse. His shadow stretched long in the moonlight, and Lyra felt a strange thrill, a recognition that he was more than a ruler. He was a force, like her wolf, like the rose, like the golden light itself. Days passed with unspoken tension. The Alpha and Lyra circled each other like predators, or perhaps like equals testing the edges of their power. She refused to bow. He refused to break her. Yet in each confrontation, small truths emerged: her courage, his restraint, her wildness, his hidden vulnerabilities. The court began to notice the subtle shifts. The Alpha, usually so cold and unyielding, was distracted, almost human. Lyra, meanwhile, grew stronger, learning to control her wolf, learning to listen to its guidance rather than its rage. She discovered that her power could heal, could protect, and could illuminate truths others wished to hide. One evening, under the fading golden moon, Lyra slipped quietly from her chamber to the gardens. She approached the golden Luna rose once more. Its glow was soft, inviting, and her wolf's heartbeat pulsed in tandem with the flower. She felt a stirring deep within her, a choice, a destiny. "Do you know what you seek?" The Alpha's voice came, startling her. He had followed her silently, his boots making no sound on the frost-covered stones. "You cannot escape the consequences of touching it. The flower awakens truths, and truths can destroy as easily as they save." Lyra looked up, her eyes calm. "I do not fear truth." His gaze held hers, unwavering, and for a moment the world seemed to pause: the frost, the shadows, the distant city beyond the walls. He saw her fully, not as a prisoner, not as a threat, but as a force that could either save or consume. Then the petals of the golden Luna rose quivered. A soft, golden wind stirred in the garden, carrying the scent of ancient forests, of storms long past, of destinies long forgotten. Lyra's wolf hummed in delight. The Alpha's pulse quickened. And as she reached out, a sudden, distant howl split the night, a sound not from any animal but from the spirit of the wolf within her. The Alpha staggered slightly, unprepared for the intensity of it. The court would never see him falter again, but here, under the golden light, he was human, fragile, awed, and caught between fear and fascination. Lyra touched the flower gently. The glow spread into her hands, up her arms, and into her chest. Her wolf purred, a vibration felt more than heard, as ancient energy coursed through her veins. The golden petals seemed to mirror her heartbeat, glowing brighter, then dimmer, then brighter again. "Do you feel it?" she asked, her voice low, steady, carrying the calm of one who has found purpose. The Alpha stepped closer, his hand hovering near hers, uncertain whether to protect or stop her. "I feel it," he admitted quietly, "and I do not understand it. But I know this: you are not like anyone I have ever known." The wolf within her roared softly, a sound of recognition, and the Alpha felt a tremor pass through the ground beneath their feet. The moonlight reflected off the rose, creating shadows that danced across the stone walls. And in that instant, Lyra understood something undeniable. She was no longer merely a prisoner, nor was she merely a girl with a wolf hidden inside her. She was something more, a guardian of truths, a challenger of power, a force that could awaken the kingdom itself. The Alpha, watching her, realized the same. He was drawn to her, terrified of her, and yet unwilling to turn away. The tension between them, charged with power, destiny, and unspoken understanding, was unbreakable. And then, from the shadows of the castle walls, a distant voice whispered, faint but deliberate, carried by the wind, "Your choices will bind you or break you." Lyra's wolf growled softly, a warning and a promise. The Alpha's hand clenched into a fist, and as the golden petals shimmered in the moonlight, both of them knew that their fates were no longer separate. They were intertwined, in ways neither could yet fully understand. The golden moon hung high, illuminating the garden, the castle, and the two figures within it. The world beyond the walls waited, unaware of the power stirring inside this small chamber of stone and frost. But soon, it would not wait. Soon, it would be forced to witness the awakening of forces that had lain dormant for centuries. And Lyra, with her wolf awakened, and the golden Luna rose trembling in her hands, knew that the next steps would not be easy, and that the Alpha King, for all his power, would need her as much as she needed him. And the game of shadows, of chains, and of hearts had only just begun. The castle breathed differently now. Shadows stretched longer in the corridors, and whispers lingered in the halls long after the speakers had left. The events of the golden moonlight had unsettled everyone, from the servants to the nobles to the Alpha himself. Nothing in the kingdom would ever be the same again. Lyra moved through the castle quietly, her wolf within her alert and patient. She had begun to understand the depth of the awakening. It was not simply strength or speed, but a connection to the very essence of the kingdom, to the ancient magic that bound the bloodline of rulers to the cycles of the moon. Every heartbeat, every rustle of the wind, every whisper in the stone seemed alive to her senses now. The Alpha King watched her from the throne room, where sunlight cut through the high windows, painting the floors with stripes of gold and shadow. He had spent sleepless nights trying to understand her power, trying to measure it, trying to contain it. He had seen armies fall, witches crumble, and spirits flee, yet he found himself unsettled by this one woman, and the wolf she carried within. She was no ordinary prisoner. She was a force of nature, a judgment of truth, and an awakening that he could neither command nor ignore. The court advisors muttered among themselves, concerned for the Alpha. "She will rise too far. He cannot control her," one whispered. Another replied, "Perhaps it is not control he seeks but understanding, something even he cannot name." Lyra did not care for the opinions of the court. She cared for balance, for justice, and for the power within her. She knew the golden Luna Rose had chosen her, or perhaps the wolf had, and its magic flowed through her like a river unbound. Yet she also knew that such power came with responsibility and danger. One evening, under the fading light of the golden moon, Lyra stood in the castle gardens, near the place where the rose had bloomed fully. Its petals shimmered softly in the twilight, a gentle reminder of the power that stirred within her. She ran her fingers lightly over the bloom, feeling the energy pulse like a heartbeat. The Alpha appeared silently beside her, as though he had been there all along. "You should not be here alone," he said, his voice quiet but firm. His eyes studied her, searching for signs of weakness or deception, yet finding none, only strength, only truth. Lyra turned to him, her gaze calm. "I am never truly alone," she replied. "The wolf is with me, and now I understand more than I ever did before." He frowned, unsettled by the certainty in her words. "Understanding does not always protect you," he said, "and the court is restless. They fear you. They fear what you might do if your wolf fully awakens." She smiled faintly, a mixture of amusement and sadness. "Do they fear truth, or do they fear themselves?" The Alpha did not answer immediately. He had faced enemies who had wielded armies, curses, and even spirits against him, but none had unsettled him like her. She was not a weapon, nor a threat in the ordinary sense. She was a reckoning, a force that could illuminate what had been hidden, even within the Alpha's own heart. Their moments together became a delicate dance of challenge and understanding. Lyra tested the boundaries of her wolf's power, while the alpha measured his own ability to restrain his fear, his pride, and the growing fascination he could not deny. They clashed often, not with swords or violence, but with words, glances, and subtle shifts in power. The castle itself seemed alive with tension. Shadows moved differently in her presence. Whispers of the awakening spread among the walls. Even the guards felt uneasy, sensing something greater than themselves stirring in the air. One night during a full moon, Lyra's wolf stirred violently. The golden luna rose in the gardens glowed brighter than before, as though recognizing the danger that approached. Spectral figures, remnants of the old curse that haunted the Alpha's bloodline, began to gather at the edges of the city. They were dark, twisted shapes, their eyes burning with ancient malice, their forms half seen, as if woven from smoke and shadow. Lyra sensed them first, her wolf alert and ready. She ran to the Alpha's side not as a prisoner but as an equal, her presence calm yet commanding. "They have come," she said simply. The Alpha's hand went to the hilt of his sword, though he knew weapons alone would not suffice. "The curse," he whispered, his voice tight. "It has grown stronger, and it seeks to consume everything." Lyra nodded. Her wolf purred low within her, a vibration that resonated with the castle itself. "Then we will face it together," she said. "I will not allow harm to come to this kingdom, nor to you." He looked at her then, really looked, and something in him shifted. He saw not a girl, not a prisoner, not a threat, but a force that could match him in strength, wisdom, and resolve. And though he would never admit it aloud, he felt a pull toward her, a connection that went beyond duty or pride. The spectral army moved closer, their shapes twisting and coiling through the trees and streets. Lyra extended her hands toward the golden luna rose, drawing its energy through her, feeling it merge with her wolf's power. The petals shimmered and glowed, casting a soft golden light that pushed the shadows back slightly. The Alpha stepped forward beside her, not to lead, not to dominate, but to stand. He allowed himself to trust her, even as every instinct of control within him screamed against it. Together their powers intertwined, human strength, wolf instinct, royal authority, and ancient magic, creating a shield of light that held the first wave of the spectral army at bay. The battle was not loud, nor was it chaotic in the way of ordinary fights. It was a clash of wills, a dance of light and shadow, a test of judgment and control. Lyra's wolf guided her, sensing weaknesses in the enemy. The Alpha followed, using his experience and instinct to protect, to support, to anticipate. And through it all, they began to understand each other in ways neither could have foreseen. The Alpha saw the wolf's wisdom, the discipline behind its raw power. Lyra saw the man behind the crown, the burden of responsibility, and the hidden vulnerability beneath his pride. As the night deepened, the spectral forms began to falter, unable to withstand the combined force of the wolf and the Alpha's command. But just as victory seemed near, a stronger presence emerged from the shadows, a being older than the kingdom itself, a spirit bound to the curse, drawn to the golden luna rose. Its voice, a whisper of wind and shadow, reached into their minds. "You may challenge the lesser spirits, but you cannot face me without sacrifice." Lyra felt a tremor of fear, not for herself, but for the Alpha. The wolf within her growled, protective and commanding. She reached for him, placing a steadying hand on his arm. "We will face it together," she said, and her wolf's power surged, weaving around them like a cloak of golden light. The Alpha met her gaze, his chest tight, his mind racing with the weight of leadership and the unfamiliar pull of trust. "I will not let you face this alone," he said, "and yet I am afraid for what may come." The golden light of the rose flared, responding to their bond, to the merging of their strength and intent. The spectral spirit recoiled, recognizing a power greater than any it had encountered in centuries. Lyra's wolf hummed, a sound that vibrated through the ground and air alike, asserting dominance not with violence but with certainty and truth. The alpha felt his heart beat in tandem with hers, with the wolf, with the pulse of the golden Luna rose itself. It was a sensation he had never experienced, a recognition that he was no longer the sole force in his kingdom. And though it unsettled him, it also filled him with something he could not name, hope, perhaps, or a connection deeper than command or control. And then, as the first light of dawn touched the castle towers, the spectral spirit withdrew, retreating into the shadows from which it had emerged. The lesser forms vanished, leaving the square and gardens empty but alive with the remnants of their battle. Lyra sank to her knees, exhausted yet exhilarated. Her wolf purred low, satisfied, calm, and watchful. The golden Luna rose's petals shimmered softly, as if acknowledging the strength and harmony of the bond that had just been formed. The alpha knelt beside her, his breath ragged, his pride tempered by awe. "You are unlike anyone I have ever known," he said quietly. "And yet I do not fear you. I only—" His words faltered, incomplete, but the meaning was clear. He did not fear her power, but the change it demanded within him. Lyra looked at him, her gaze steady, understanding, and gentle. "Power is not meant to be feared," she said. "It is meant to be used wisely, to protect, to guide, and to illuminate what is hidden." For a long moment they remained there, side by side, human and wolf, crown and courage, bond and power. And in that moment they understood something undeniable. They were stronger together than apart. Yet the threat that lingered in the shadows, the ancient presence that had spoken to them, had not been vanquished. It would return. And when it did, neither the Alpha nor Lyra would face it alone. The kingdom itself had shifted. The wolf and the crown had begun their dance of power, trust, and destiny. And the story of their bond and the trials to come was far from over. The kingdom lay in an uneasy silence. Even the wind seemed hesitant, carrying only the softest rustle of leaves and the distant call of birds. The golden light of dawn had yet to break fully, leaving the castle in twilight, a liminal space between shadow and sun. Inside the throne room, the Alpha King stood at the highest balcony, his cloak heavy on his shoulders, yet his presence commanding. His gaze scanned the city, aware of the whispers of fear and awe that still lingered in the streets. But he no longer felt the certainty that had once guided him. That certainty had been shaken by Lyra, and by the wolf that now lived in her, a force he could neither command nor ignore. Lyra approached him quietly. Her wolf hummed softly within her, a vibration of calm and power that resonated with the very stones of the castle. She had not spoken for hours, letting her senses guide her, letting the pulse of the golden Luna rose, now resting safely in the gardens, teach her control. "You are waiting," she said softly, her voice carrying more authority than the Alpha had expected. "For what?" "For the storm," he replied, his tone grave. "The spirit we faced, it has returned, and it brings the full curse with it. I feel it in the walls, in the air, in the hearts of the people. It will not be held back by light or moon or rose. It is older than the kingdom itself." Lyra nodded, her wolf's ears twitching beneath her skin. "Then we must face it," she said, "together." He looked at her, really looked, and saw not a prisoner, not a threat, but an equal, someone who could share the weight of responsibility, who could wield power as a partner rather than a rival. His chest tightened at the thought. "Together," he agreed, though his voice betrayed the tremor of unease he could not hide. The shadow came first as a whisper, a shifting, twisting presence that grew into forms half seen, like smoke given life. The spirit's voice, older than memory, filled the throne room. "You awaken what was forbidden. You dare to challenge what has endured for centuries." Lyra stepped forward, hands lifted slightly. Her wolf pulsed in response, a silent drum of power that anchored her, guided her. The Alpha followed her lead, standing close, ready, his instincts sharpened by her calm confidence. The spirit moved, its form swirling, dark yet shimmering with hints of silver and gold, drawn irresistibly to the golden Luna's power and the wolf that had awakened within her. Its first strike was not physical, but a wave of fear, a force that sought to fracture the mind, to turn courage into doubt. Lyra felt the fear and allowed it to pass through her, letting her wolf absorb and transform it. She did not resist with violence, but with clarity. "You will not harm this kingdom," she said, her voice echoing in the chamber. "And you will not harm him." The Alpha King, standing beside her, felt the wolf's energy flow into him, steadying his heart, sharpening his focus. He had fought armies, dealt with treachery, faced death, but this required trust and unity. Not command, not pride, trust. The spirit lashed out again, this time with forms that twisted reality itself, shapes of smoke and shadow, whispers that carried the weight of centuries. Lyra extended her hands toward it, drawing the golden Luna's energy through her, weaving it with the wolf's presence and the Alpha's authority. Light flared, golden and pure, and the shadows recoiled. "You cannot bind what is alive," the spirit hissed. "You cannot control what flows through time." Lyra's wolf hummed, a sound of patience, of judgment, of inevitability. She stepped closer to the Alpha, letting their combined strength shine through her hands, through their joined wills. "We do not control," she said. "We protect. We awaken what must be seen. That is our power." The spirit shrieked, a sound that vibrated the walls, yet it faltered, sensing the strength in unity. The Alpha raised his hands, not in defiance, but in alignment with her power, and together they radiated a golden light that wrapped around the spirit like a tide, soft yet unyielding. For hours, or perhaps moments that stretched like centuries, they stood united, human, wolf, and ruler, confronting a force older than memory. Lyra's wolf guided her, sensing weaknesses in the spirit's attack. The Alpha's experience, his understanding of power and fear, provided focus, and together they created a harmony that no curse could withstand. At last the spirit faltered. Its form shivered and broke apart, dispersing into the shadows from which it had emerged. The castle seemed to exhale, the walls settling, the wind calming. The curse, ancient and relentless, had been held at bay, but its presence lingered in memory, a warning that vigilance would always be required. Lyra sank to her knees, exhausted yet exultant. Her wolf purred softly, a vibration of satisfaction and calm. The golden Luna rose, resting safely in the gardens, shimmered in approval, its petals glowing faintly in the first rays of dawn. The Alpha knelt beside her, chest still heavy, mind racing, yet his eyes were softened by awe and gratitude. You are more than I imagined," he said quietly. "Stronger, wiser, braver. I do not know how I survived this without you." Lyra reached out and touched his hand, steady and firm. "You would have survived," she said softly. "Perhaps not unscathed, but you would have, because you are strong, and together we are stronger still." He looked at her then, really looked, and saw not a prisoner, not a threat, but an equal. And something inside him shifted. The weight of crown and curse, the isolation of power began to lighten. He did not need to dominate or control her. He only needed to trust, to share, to stand united. The morning light broke fully over the castle towers, spilling into the throne room, painting the stone floors in warm gold. Lyra stood, brushing the frost from her cloak, her wolf calm and watchful. The Alpha rose beside her, their heights different but their presence aligned. Outside, the kingdom began to stir. The people had felt the pulse of the awakening, the clash of light and shadow, even if they did not understand it. Whispers of hope replaced whispers of fear. Stories of the woman and her wolf and of the Alpha who had stood beside her would travel through the kingdom for years to come. Lyra turned to the Alpha. "The curse is weakened," she said, "but it is not gone. We must remain vigilant. The world will test us again and again." He nodded, the crown on his head feeling lighter, less a burden and more a symbol of responsibility shared. "Then we will face it," he said, "together." Their eyes met, and for a moment all the past fear, the past chains, the past pride melted away. In its place was something stronger, a bond forged in trust, in challenge, in shared strength, and tempered by the trials they had endured. The wolf within Lyra purred softly, satisfied, calm, yet alert. It had found harmony with its human form and its purpose. And the Alpha, feeling the pulse of that presence, understood that the world he had ruled with fear and authority was changing. Because of her, because of the wolf, because of trust. The golden Luna rose shimmered one last time, its petals scattering faint golden light across the garden. It had served its purpose, awakening the wolf, guiding Lyra, uniting two forces that could face the darkness together. And as the sun rose fully over the kingdom, Lyra and the Alpha stepped into the light side by side, human and wolf, crown and courage, strength and wisdom. Their journey was far from over, the shadows still lingered, ancient and patient, but they had faced the storm together, and their bond was unbreakable. The kingdom itself seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The frost melted, the wind carried warmth, and the first song of birds heralded a new dawn. Lyra and the Alpha looked out over their lands, their hands brushing, their presence united. "Whatever comes next," Lyra said softly, "we face it as one. Not ruler and subject, not wolf and man, but as equals." He nodded, his pride tempered by understanding, his heart softened by respect. "As one," he agreed. The shadows of the past, the lingering curse, and the forces still hidden would test them again, but the dawn had come. The golden Luna rose had bloomed, the wolf had awakened, and the Alpha had fallen not to fear, but to the strength of trust and unity. And together, they would face whatever the world had in store. The kingdom had shifted. The wolf and the crown now ruled not by fear, but by courage, trust, and the promise of a golden dawn.